All right. So this is the weekly public issue triage for the Habitat Project. The week of, what is this week? June 13th, right?
One day off the anniversary of Habitat. It's tomorrow.
Yeah, the anniversary is tomorrow. And for anybody who is watching the stream or watching this retroactively, we are hosting a Habitat birthday party in Seattle next week. And the information for that is on the community page. There should actually be on the Habitat community page a link to all of the information on the birthday party. We're going to share that into general and into announcements as well, so that as many folks know about it in advance as possible. And actually that's 2 weeks. That's not next week, to clarify. So you still have time to prepare, which is good. So now, we're competing live stream airtime with E3.
Really? Wait, yeah. I have something I need to do right now.
Well, and it's the tail end of E3 at this point. Like, I think almost all of the events have really kind of already come and gone. So, but you'll have a lot to catch up on, I guess. Cool. So let me go ahead and share the Habitat page. I need to get the query up here real quick. I can recall how we did that last time.
Yeah, I probably didn't paste that. That would have been helpful.
Oh, it's fine. I think that I may even actually have it in my history here. And actually, it might even be in actually, I should put that in the doc. I'm halfway through, or maybe more than halfway through, writing up a blog post that covers the whole process for triage, as well as governance. And it's taken me a while because I'm realizing there are some gaps in the way that we do things. And so some of that work of writing the blog post has turned from writing a blog post about governance into defining the process that with which we govern specific parts of the project.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And probably a little bit accidental.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. All right. Let's see if Fletcher beats me to it. That cannot be correct. Let's see. It's only showing one issue. There we go. This is the query. I'll go ahead and post this in chat. And with the rate that we are having conversations in Slack, this will be gone by next week, which is fine. So we'll just remember next week to check the archive for this query. That should be the link. Basically, for those of you that are following along or haven't seen one of these before, this query just gives us a list of our issues back and sorts it, sifts out the things that are like, that we've already put on our project board or that have already been added to a milestone. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen here if I can figure out how to do that. Doink. Okay, everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to start with issue number 2576. And we're going to try and do something new this week as well, kind of in line with some of the changes that we're making about exposing a lot of this process as much as we possibly can. I'm going to try and track the issues that we actually triage and put them in a minutes post on discourse in our announcements channel. So that way anybody who's following along can kind of go in and see the post from this week. And I'll update that. We'll basically keep one single thread that includes all of the minutes. And we'll just post new replies basically to that thread every week, every time that we do a triage, so that you can just kind of go in and get really quickly and see the things that we've touched. And if there are any extra thoughts, we'll try and take those down as well. So let's start with 2576. So there's a link back to Slack, which if I pull that up, we can see theoretically what this refers to, the documentation channel. I probably should put that in a new, right? So those are not separate issues. Let's see. Ideally, we probably want to ask the contributor to maybe open these up as separate issues. But here are a few of them, right? Document how to access the config.log. Document usage of Hab Studio run commands. 1 second here. And what's the last one? Exporting a Docker container. We've already got examples of that, but it would be good to kind of loop that back, I guess. So let's do this. Is there any opposition to requesting to have these opened as separate issues?
It'd probably be a little easier to track. And our Slack activity means that link to that separate documentation channel is going to be gone in like a week or two. So if it happened in general, we would have that archived, but.
Oh, we don't archive the documentation channel either.
Let's just say until right now, I didn't actually realize we had one. So I can tell you how up to date I'm keeping because I'm keeping my eyeballs on general.
Right. Yep. I only found out that we had a documentation channel last week, which is part of the thing too, the problem with Slack, right? I've kind of like, I want it to be organic. I don't want anybody to feel like they can't start a new channel for some specific thread of discussion. But for things like documentation, it's probably better to get it into general than it is to have it in a separate channel, because it becomes a little bit tedious to have to like track down lots of varying possible locations for this information. So so I'll leave a comment here real quickly. All right. Okay. So we'll close that one. We'll move on to the next one. CLI UX helpers 2572. So this is a pretty big issue, but let's I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to read through the content, and then we can kind of discuss.
Okay.
So,
I guess my first reaction is we should probably make these all discrete issues, because I can already see
Yep.
multiple things happening in this thread, and it will be impossible to close this out otherwise.
Yeah. Yep. It should definitely be separate. I think what we should do is probably request separate issues for the ones that we feel like would be good, and then consider some of them closed. For example, I don't know if there's significant value in a clean subcommand for the studio, if only because it's that's sort of what Hab Studio RM does, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that we necessarily want. I think that there is a UX issue here that Ryan is touching on, but I don't think that this is the solution. And I think that the UX issue that specifically touches on, which is this block here, for those of you who are following along, is that the idea that sometimes it takes a long time if you're iterating rapidly to pull down the studio packages over and over again. When you're trying to get these clean room builds. And I think that's actually an issue with the way that we are caching packages and or not caching packages. So for that specifically, I think we could probably say, this, I don't know that this is totally useful. I don't know if either of you have an opinion on that, Fletcher or Chris.
I don't have a strong opinion on this one. What you just described makes sense to me, though.
I could see maybe a flag on enter that would be like cleanup, that it would just call RM afterwards, or a flag to be like on enter to be like ensure clean, which would pre-cleanup. That's, I guess my first reaction is we're not explaining that well enough maybe in our documentation, that enter is meant for like, I'm in iteration mode, which means I don't mind things being dirty for now. When I'm like totally done, I might use Hab package build, and then I know it starts from 0 and it's completely clean. Putting something back to a clean state that's the easy button, is supposed to be like destroy it and then create it again. And yes, I agree that like that's maybe the reason people don't do that so much, is because it takes too long to recreate a studio, which is totally on our list of things to hit up. It's going to take 1 or 2 more plane rides before I'm just going to do it, because I have the same problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's when I've run into it as well. When it's like I'm heading to a conference and I need to build a thing, and I'm get on the airplane and realize, oh shit, even though I've got all of this stuff, I'm gonna have to re-download all of it, every time I try to build, rather than just the first time. So
yeah, if something like, if digging deeper, if part of the pain point behind this is that like recreating it is too slow, or it's too much work, or it's too network intensive, I think we can hit it there if that is one of those like underlying things. It's hard to know for sure, but
yep. So if we consider these kind of separate, we can kind of go through the list. So I think it's safe to say that this touches on something, but I don't think that we would accept. I don't know if it's what we want, implementation wise. If we go back to the first thing, we'll kind of go through the list here. The Hab package upload to specify uploading the most recently built package without specifying what you're uploading. I like the idea of this as well. But it also scares me a little bit, and for one specific reason, which is that like, if you're running these things as 2 separate commands, and your studio isn't clean, it makes me wonder if it's if it's too abstracted what's actually happening there. Maybe it's not. Like, I know that we were talking yesterday about some of this functionality around being able to just like run a build. And I said, well, wouldn't it be crazy if you could just run that build and it would automatically upload the built package once you're ready, if there's like a flag for that, which is more or less, I think, what Ryan is asking for here as well. So implementation aside.
So I may have misread this. What I kind of thought is what they're asking for is have package upload and then like, core/Redis like a package identifier. My first reaction was that's not exactly how that command works, is you need a path to a local heart file on disk, and we're going to take that package artifact and upload it. So I probably misinterpreted this as somebody misinterpreting the command. I wonder though if in this one case if the knowledge about that last build.env, anytime the build program runs, there's this little file, this little sidecar file, it's always called the same thing, gets rewritten or updated, that contains metadata, so you can source it if you're in a shell environment, or just split on the equals if you need it. That gives you like a SHA-SUM of the last heart that was built, the full name to the path of the heart, the package identifier, all that stuff. The idea is like you could, in a little subshell, source that, and then you have a variable that you can use for uploading. So I'm wondering if, I bet you we don't have that super documented, and I'm wondering if having a couple of those examples might make that a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just like having a more obvious point, because that's a super useful file. But yeah, I don't know that I think I just sort of bumped into it myself.
Well, and this came up early, and when we were using like our Chef product automate the workflow part, which we called delivery at the time, is trying to figure out, like, once we've done a build, how do we calculate like the path of the build? And then it was like, oh yeah, it would be great if we had a little like bit of metadata that you could source every time, and you want it like named the same thing so you can always go to it like a static location. But I doubt that we probably have that documented.
Yep. Yeah. So we can maybe Fletcher, if you wouldn't mind, as we're kind of talking through this, would you be able to leave comments to the effect of what we cover?
Yeah. Okay.
And you don't have to be super verbose, but we can just start with asking to have it broken out into separate issues, and then kind of go through it point by point. So I don't hate that idea. It might be useful. It might be a useful UX thing. We could find a way to implement it, I think. And we can also anyways, we'll continue down. So after like having access to latest, this might even be, these two things might kind of go together, right? If we just created a helper variable or helper function or something that exists inside of the studio that just returns the path to that, then it's even easier.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I kind of thought what I tend to use is the hab package path for that.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
I also chalk this up to like, we probably haven't explained that enough. Why was that there in the first place? Fletcher was too lazy to do exactly this thing, so I wrote me a little thing, and we end up using it. The build program uses it, so it was useful in two places, so that's why we have it. But it's probably not sufficiently documented why you would want to use something like that.
Yeah, it would be good, and the more the more options that people have, the better. Moving on from that, being able to list all of the packages that are installed in a studio. That could be an interesting feature. So the thing I'm running through in my head right now is it's kind of hard because we really need this to be broken out into separate issues in order to mark them as accepted or what have you. It's going to be kind of hard to track this. So I think perhaps what we should do is request changes to have this broken out into separate issues, and then we can just kind of come back later. Just keep in mind the thoughts and the discussion dialogue we've had around these, and we'll come back later and update each individual issue, and that'll make it easier for us to triage. At that point, I think I could probably we can do it asynchronously as well. It doesn't have to wait till next week. So that being said, Fletcher, if you want to close this after you leave a comment, that'd be great.
Quick thoughts from our triage session. And because I did this, might not even be English. But there's a couple notes.
That's no worries. I think yeah, it's hard to do all of this at once.
So yeah, and the other thing was about maybe cleaning up older versions, and this was something that I've had side conversations about. Is something I think it would be actually nice if the service package, like the package you're making for your application, you could tell it like I have a cleanup policy or a whatever, and maybe the supervisor one day starts to default to like, I will just keep the last 4 artifacts of your package, or 2 maybe, so it can do a rollback, which means that like for one that's older, the supervisor would just start like cleaning that up after itself,
Yes.
at least your top level package, and then that starts to address some of these problems. The really hard part is what do you delete? Depends on like how you look at that bundle of packages. The supervisor. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, my bad. There's another issue. There's another issue about that was opened a few weeks back, where somebody just said the same thing, but they were thinking more on the lines of the runtime, right? So, but we could theoretically kill both of these problems with one fix. But yeah, I think that the whole thing is being that like eventually, if you're upgrading your packages using Habitat right now, eventually you're going to have lots of copies of your artifact laying around if you're not containerizing your workloads, which means like if your artifact is a gig, that adds up fast.
Yeah.
So it might be good to tie that back. I can try and find that issue as well when we get the updated separated issues.
Yeah, but yeah, like one way you could look at that is the packages are in service of the service, and the supervisor can help the service manage its lifecycle, and one of those might be cleaning up old deploys of itself. So yeah, there's ways we can kind of look at this, I think, that actually involves not a lot more like user facing stuff, because that's an out of band operator thing that might be okay in development, but maybe is like less useful than something that happens automatically. Yeah,
it'd be nice if inside of the studio, if you could specify that. But again, it still comes back to that, like if you're building on OS X or on Windows, you're never going to use that, right? Because your studio is going to be ephemeral anyways. So it's only useful to people who are building on Linux, and then also only useful in the case where you just don't want to have Studio RM to do the cleanup, right? Yeah. Anyways, we can discuss more. Let's move on for now, and we can come back to that. So the next issue is 2571. Which I think actually, Chris, you wrote a PR for this, didn't you?
Actually, I did a git ignore generate thing for so Habplan init just kicks out a git ignore if you're in a git project, not a README. So yeah, different thing, but related.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I totally spaced. I knew that you had been working on something in this space, but do we want? So we have a lot of problems with the Habplan init. Like I feel like every day I've had a new conversation about another aspect of Habplan init that we feel like we might want to change. And I know that we've had lots of conversations about rewriting that functionality to be kind of drastically different than its current implementation, just because since we've added in some other features, we feel like it could be more useful than where the state that it's in right now. It's a great PR for a long time, but now we're kind of grown. I think with all the other work that's been going on, we can find ways to make it more useful. The README, automatically generating a README. Do you have any opinions on this, either of y'all?
I think this is something we will eventually be able to use. So this is looking forward a little bit more into how Builder and the depot can help users discover stuff and understand how to use it. So I think this is kind of looking forward a little bit into if you happen to have perhaps a file in the right place, the depot page for that package could be a bit smarter potentially about like showing you information. And if we had a reasonable, like a normal, a more normalized format, this might help for some of that display. So I believe this is kind of where this is coming from. There'll probably be some incarnation of this, I'm sure, that is going to show up. So this is probably like work that we'll be doing. And this is, I guess, one way we can start to have, more consistent page view in the future. Does that sound right, Chris? I think so.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think the aim for this is just to help get the manifest page. It doesn't give you much opportunity to explain how to use the package that you built to users, consumers of it, and so to have a README that has a bit of starter structure to it that you can use to fill out the details. Here's how you configure my package. Here's how to use it generally. Would be nice and kind of help people take more advantage of some of the packages that are available publicly in the depot.
So yeah, I could see this morphing, changing details here and there, where that file goes, what it's exactly called. I'm just thinking of like corner cases of like, if my plan's in the root of my repo, does it nuke my normal README or not? Do we call that something else? Like, is it pkg.md or something that like that's the Habitat package README? I don't know. But this is all probably going to be like rolled up into some future work that I think this is nothing more than like a reminder and that first sort of pass at like how it could work.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Great. So I've gone ahead and put it in accepted minor since it's stuff that we already have planned to take on, and we'll go and move along from there into 2568. All right. Oh, sweet. Yeah, I like that.
yeah, me too.
This is something I think we continually have problems with. This entire project is completely open source, and sometimes making that especially clear to people when they first see it can help calibrate in their minds, because we have actually seen situations where people will come to this, and because of the way the website looks, it looks amazing, they assume it's a commercial offering. They assume it's some commercial product because it doesn't look like an open source project, which is a high form of compliment. But now we've got this problem that we need it to be very clear that this is all free. This is all open.
I think if we just remove all the CSS, we'll get that point across.
I know.
Just remove all the design. No, I had a friend that thought it was a startup.
Yeah, okay. I absolutely love this problem.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have, except for when you're trying to grow. We're trying to grow the community, and you want people to try it, and then they think, I don't want to pay for whatever this is. So
when I saw this, what I do in my head is when I go to a site or project is I look in the header for a word called pricing, and to me that means there is a mechanism by which they're making money. And I can see that, and then I can find out where that lies. And we don't have that, so I might be extra confused.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I figured somebody in the community could add this tag, but I would assume that will actually probably be Chris.
Yeah, or one of us. Yeah, probably.
Or one of us. Yeah. So,
I mean, do we have a doc page about that? In some ways, that was like some linkable thing that would say, yeah, by the way, this is all Apache v2 and it's all blah, 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 and this is why we did it. If we need our little 100-word explanation, we could totally do that too.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Or even just a blog post or something. Realistically, it should probably link to something in the wiki, because that's probably good information to have in the wiki. And then it also directs people over there. But if you feel like leaving a comment to that effect, feel free. We can come back to that as well.
I'll leave a comment for that. I also have to drop, unfortunately. I have to get ready for another thing, so I will see you all around at the next time.
Chris,
Awesome.
thanks for joining.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, so the next issue is going to be 2566, opened by Mr. Bendang. And this is something that we were discussing in general. And Fletcher, I don't know if you were around for that conversation or not, but I'll give you a moment to kind of read his thoughts there.
Yeah, this rings a bit of a bell, and something I've been wanting to think about more as a project since we kind of did our launch is health versus metrics kind of thing.
Yeah, and I know that James added the metric. It is a metrics endpoint that uses a Prometheus integration, I believe.
I think that's right. Now, that might not be fully functional at the moment. There was some work when we were doing refactoring that may not have entirely survived intact. I'm not sure.
Yes, so I think that it did.
Okay.
I believe that it did. I believe that it does work, but I haven't played with it in a while. But yeah, I think it may need some refactoring to actually be, let me see, I actually pulled that up here and kind of look. I think it may end up needing some refactoring to actually allow people to implement their
This
own.
feels, and I think Ben's got the right sort of pre-category on it. This seems RFC-ish, like in our sense that we don't officially have an RFC process, but in terms of something we'd want to talk more about that I kind of agree with, but I have no idea how and when we do it. I would like to see this too. This brings up something that I've wondered about. Up to this point, the supervisor does everything for the app, around it and sort of in spite of the application. There's nothing really that the application can use or that the supervisor offers directly to the application to use. And I often have this, or think about what would it look like if the application knew that if I'm running under Habitat, I can always write statsd to this socket report.
Right.
And then, so that I can just write apps. I don't have to worry about how the thing's wired. There's always something I can fire into. And it's something that the supervisor provides my application. So there's a little bit of coupling. We just haven't really done anything like that before. And I kind of view this as it's down the piping of and then how would that go out? And where would that go? And how would that be wired? Because when I go back to thinking about what Habitat helps your services and applications do, it helps them be the best kind of applications you would have wanted to write from the ground up, and the best behaviors. And one of those is it exposes metrics, metrics and monitoring and health. So. And we also don't really have pluggable or customizable endpoints right now. And I don't know if something like this would be so hard to get one solution that that's where you start to plug something in and we need to expose something new. I really don't know.
Yeah, and I mean I guess we don't have technically pluggable. We the health check endpoint is as close as we get right now to having something that's a pluggable interface, because you can just write your own thing and output what you like. So if this is the kind of thing where it's your app is literally expecting to be kind of dumping out metrics, or if there's even something that you could script yourself and return a value, another endpoint that like behaves in a similar way is not a bad idea. My understanding about the PR that James wrote for us, I thought, and I may be incorrect about this, this metrics endpoint were metrics specific to the Habitat services and supervisor.
Oh, yeah, you know what? I bet you're right. I think you're right.
I think that's what it is. Now, there was a theory that like, I think that Nathan's response here is saying that it's possible to add additional metrics to the endpoint, but I don't think that was the initial purpose. But it might be good to also tag James Casey on this to see, or for us to, when we kind of further evaluate this, to spend some time looking through his actual PR and determine whether or not that is the case. Because if it's already the case where you could just put arbitrary metrics into that endpoint, then problem solved. We just need to document it, right? So for now, though, I think this is work that we would be interested in doing.
I think so. I'd like it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like it too. I guess what we should kind of discuss is it work that we are already planning to do, or is it something that we would accept if somebody from the community would just write it? Do we plan to try and get prioritization on it or not, basically?
Got a feeling that's probably less likely in the next few months. So like there is that chance, but there's probably a design process we'd all be going through together on that one. That would be probably a very hard thing for somebody to sort of like land and have it be just about right. That'd be my guess.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. You know what? This might be one. Whoops. This might actually be a super good issue to do some pairing on with some community folks. So I'll add another tag there for the mentored label. It may be, we kind of need to discuss further, but it may be a thing where this would be a really, really good way to get into some various bits of the supervisor code for somebody who's looking to contribute. Mm-hmm. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is going to be 2562. Right here.
Yeah, that seems like straight up, that's just a parity mismatch. We definitely want that, I would say.
Yep. This is a bug.
I guess what would that be, like a .studio rc.ps1, or it would be called something similar-ish enough. If we put it in one, we should probably have it in the other.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, so I think that this is a bug.
I would kind of call it, yeah. That's kind of what I think.
I'm wondering if the Windows bits of this make it a little bit more complicated.
It might. I mean, it involves PowerShell, whether or not that's easy. Because I think the Studio Codebase is, we might not even have, oh, that's awesome. We might have to add a label for PowerShell.
Yeah, I put in shell generically instead of bash because I figured that way, that can apply to PowerShell or bash or whatever else, right?
This is something that still I need to probably write, or we need to put it in the home directories for some of the components. Like the non-Windows Studio is written in shell, but it's like Born POSIX shell that uses BusyBox. But our build system it's bash, and it uses GNU bash. So there's somewhere you don't have to care nearly as much, and then there's some places where you do need to care.
Yeah, that feels bad. That feels like a UX problem.
Well, a bit. I mean, they're for specific reasons, but
yeah, totally. And it may not be realistic to make them the same thing, but for having consistency is good.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say that this is work we would probably do, especially with all of the. I know that Matt is planning to get more into the Windows code again here soon.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a like feature catch-up exercise we need to do. I feel sort of bad about that as well. That we've revved and iterated a lot of things in and around that studio, and sometimes at the expense of keeping the Windows one totally up to date, because we had some of this was proving out ideas, and we kind of need to figure out like what did we leave behind that we need to bring back up on the Windows side.
Absolutely, absolutely. We may also want to tag, like, we don't have platform tags in here, but it might be good to have a platform tag. Maybe it's not something we need immediately because we don't have that many platforms.
No, but we had some equivalent of that before that I was using, like, oh, this is a problem with our Mac build versus Windows versus, I guess, Linux is maybe what we had.
Let's just do that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
Quick. So we'll need a new color. So for those of you that are interested in the Habitat colors, you can always go to brand.chef.io.
No.
Which is our style guide.
What? No.
Yeah. And this will have all the information on the Habitat brand and the color schemes and everything else. Right now, I think I'm using these 5 colors. These two, and that one. Let's double check there.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize there was something like on a website.
Yeah, this is our style guide. It's fantastic. So let's grab this is the last color that we have in the style guide. And we'll use that for this next set of labels. Let's go ahead and create that. Yeah, there we go. And we will do P for platform, Windows. Right? I'm going to copy that as well.
Yeah.
Then we'll do another one. P. I guess it's Mac OS, right?
Yeah, I keep going back. That's probably good enough, yeah.
Linux. That's probably enough for now. And then, if we end up with more platform support in the future, then we can add more. All right. So, but in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and update this with that platform tag. Perfect. And I will update our wiki page later to include these. All right. So this is patches. Let's see, patches and more. This is number 2561. So I'll give you a minute to read.
Yeah.
So this was related to a specific issue. And I think right now you can, in fact, patch like the standard C library approach to patching. And I don't think that we have a need to make that a first-class citizen just because you can already do it the way that you're used to doing it. You just add it into the callback. And so long as you have that patch available, you should be able to implement it the same way you would by hand on a regular system.
Yeah, so if I was writing like the effective plan guide, I would say that's usually something you would do in do prepare, because it happens after all your source code's extracted, and you can manipulate that code base before the build begins. And that's our core plans is just littered with that, especially the lower level packages. And we do a combination of things. So plans like glibc, like ones that are really low level that might have 1 or 2 patches, we've tended to actually just include the patch file in with the code base alongside the plan. I just figured that's the safest thing possible. And then attribution to wherever the source came from. If that was, sometimes it's a mailing list, sometimes it is source code out of a tree, sometimes it's from like the Nix OS project to be like, here's how we fixed it, and we got it from here. Now, the biggest exception to that was Bash and Readline specifically for the core plans. At least that's what I was struggling with. It's the same author for both of those projects, and the way he does releases is a release and then patches on top of that until a certain point, and then he'll release a new minor. But I think the first time I built Bash, there was like 30-some or 40-some patches on top. And they're really in a normalized place. So the Bash core plan and readline, I basically came up with just a little bit of a pattern of doing what somebody suggested here is, what Chris suggested is calling download file, and I'm doing it in the download stage and the verify stage, and then the prepare stage where I'm just downloading a whole bunch of patches. But it made me a little nervous about just downloading patches raw off the internet. So there's also, in the Bash one, you'll see there's also a another little just shell file that gets sourced in that contains a Bash array of all the patches with all the URLs, and then SHA-SUMs for all of them. Because I was a little worried about getting one thing like partially downloaded and then they all get patched and then your Bash doesn't work. You're like, what the hell happened? But those two out of our like 200 or 300 is about the only one I can remember that is on that like level of, that's a little bit more on the extreme side. Typically, at least in core plans, the way we approach building packages is to honor the upstream as much as possible, which means minimizing the amount of patches if we possibly can.
Yeah.
Because the upstream has a project, they have a worldview, and they want it to work in a certain way. And we're not taking sort of dogmatic philosophical approach of like, this has to be over here, this has to be over there, which is why we're trying to minimize patches anyways. It's much in the spirit of Arch Linux. So we don't tend to have a lot of them. And the ones that are small, if I had been working on them, I just tend to vendor them right alongside so that it's really, really clear what's going on, where they're coming from. And also, like, if we're updating to a new version of the software, does that even apply anymore? And then we can delete it.
Right. Yep.
So I believe like Arch Linux might even have a build phase to do patching, maybe. Or there was some package system I was referencing that did, but it just didn't seem to come up quite as much. And our do prepare was like a great spot to like, sometimes we'd apply a patch, sometimes we'd need to update a path in a bunch of source code. So using just sed and like kind of manually patching the code base directly.
Right.
Sometimes that worked. So we've got great examples of all those tricks and things in core plans.
Yeah.
It just kind of depended what's needed. If it turns out like there's 500 libraries in like the X11 org that all need to be done the same way, then maybe we have another problem. Or the first step would be to like extract everything that's super common, if it's all in one Git repo, and source the same like little helper, and then see if that is more broadly applicable. But that tends to be how we surface these things, is wait until there's a clear need and a pattern.
Yeah. And in this case, because you can do it, we like, I don't know if there's a huge need currently to have a helper for this, as much as just I guess primarily because I think a lot of our users are not going to be going down this path. Like if you were maintaining your own OS, and you're using Habitat packages to do that, which I think is what this community member was talking about doing earlier. You would run into this because it's the kind of things that we have run into maintaining the Habitat packages themselves.
Right.
But I don't know if it warrants work. Like, I don't know if it warrants extending the code or not. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like unless there's this big corpus of stuff where that's clearly like the problem, I kind of look at our core plans. This is what I always come back to. This is the when I'm mining and looking for patterns and stuff, like I always come back to our core plans because there's now enough non-trivial software in there. And then I can like go back and ask myself, like, would that have helped a lot? And like, I don't know if it might have incrementally, but at the same time, if we add something new, there's potential more complexity that someone's going to want to learn or understand. And there's a little bit more indirection. If we patch 1 in 100 times or need to 1 in 100 times, it might be more useful for somebody who's not familiar with any of that to understand what that actually is, rather than having a helper that now they need to understand 2 things, is what that's giving them, and then how that actually works, or how that works, and then what we're doing to help them. Like a lot of these are like, you could grep our code base for the word patch, and that's because we're using the patch utility. And you can see most of them are just doing like a patch -p1 and then the
Yep. Yeah.
and I'm like, that's pretty simple.
Exactly. Yeah, I would push people more towards that, I think, than having another layer of abstraction in that. So I'm gonna close this issue out for now.
Yeah. Okay. We'll always have this tension, and it's sort of like the user base that the build system is like speaking to. And we do have this like more distro package maintainer of like the core lower level middle stuff, and then more the like application code base service stuff that like at the end thing where, boy, if I had to patch my own code base, that's a weird notion.
Yeah.
Maybe I could just, like git commit my change and then I don't have to patch my own code base. So there's definitely like those two sort of things, and there's always going to be tension there.
Yep. Agreed. So the next one is 2559, and the request is a CLI alias that exposes the local keys that are available.
Well, I'm just trying to think of our Hab subcommand structure, like a Hab origin key list.
Yeah.
I suppose we could have something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the hard thing would be show me all the keys, because we don't have a super thing for like to treat all keys.
Right. If you've got keys and you've put those things in different places rather than the default location, it'll be hard. But we could pretty easily traverse the default keys. Like,
yeah, so I have a feeling that probably in this case it's the origin keys that is most useful to the vast majority of people at the moment.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like I wouldn't see why a feature like that would probably be useful. And there's like it feels like there's a natural slot for it. There's probably question about how do you show if it's only the public or the private, or like how exactly how might that look? But
yep. So I think we would accept a PR for that for sure. I don't see us probably getting prioritization on that. But it would be a really good starter PR for somebody. Super easy thing, I think, to kind of to do. Yeah. So I've flagged that easy, and I put it in help wanted. So we're good to go. We can move on to the next one. And we're just about done for the day. So we will go through the next one, which is 2558. We'll see how we're feeling. We did start a couple minutes late, so maybe we'll do a couple more, but we'll move on to that next.
It's 14 hours.
Create instead of generate. Is this key? This must be key, right? Hab origin key.
Yeah, and we also have Hab user key, Hab service key. generate is the verb that we had for that. And yeah, maybe in another life, maybe we probably should have used the word create, or maybe there was already something there. I don't remember why. So I take the point. I would. We do have a usability pattern at the moment, which is having like ideally one canonical place for it.
Yeah.
And the only exception we make are those top level shortcut aliases that are clear, like shortcuts to the full explicit thing. So there's I'm hoping in a user's mind, there's like only one command to yield like the result they need. So that when you start to look on websites and documentation, like you're not seeing 2 or 3 ways and going, oh, is that the new way or the old way, or is it the renamed way, or oh, it's an alias. So I guess on this one, I would probably push back a little bit myself. It makes me nervous to get into the game of aliases, because then there's unless we have a clearly defined set of rules, there's kind of no way to stop that from eventually being aliases for everything.
Yeah, it's just aliases all the way down.
So now we haven't really, we probably have not written that out somewhere, that this is how we treat that thing, and that should one day be written out.
Yeah.
Because it would help somebody contributing to know, like, I want to make this new command, where's the logical place for it? And if they can't quite figure it out, we can say this is how we structure it, and this is how we think about it. This is how we're hoping it to work, is you have like hab, and then some kind of thing or a noun that you're operating on, and then ideally at the end an action verb that like it takes action on that thing. So that's why we have origin key generate. Origin key is the noun. We chose not to go with dashes for something that had, if there's 2 words, like just use a space like the English language. So that's why it's a little extra verbose, but it is completely normalized for everything. It's consistent. Service key, user key, origin key, ring key. It's 100% consistent. So we went with consistency sometimes over character length. And I would also say, like, for if this is about the origin key, there's an even shorter way to do this, is call hab setup, and it'll do it all for you. But yeah, the word generate's extra long. Like maybe in another tack, maybe we should have just made that shorter. It feels like there was a reason that we went with generate. I just don't remember what it is. To me, when I think of generate, I think of like if it comes from randomness. Versus something create sounds a little more deterministic to me, but I don't know. We do have a feature turned on for our command line parser in Rust, which is the clap crate. And I think that it uses, what is it? It's the like closest match natural language thing to like when you mistype something, it'll say like, did you mean blah? I have no idea if you typed create, if it would say, did you mean generate? I'd have to try that, but that would be pretty awesome if it did.
Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. We'll just do a couple more, or maybe just this will be the last one. This is issue number 2557. So this was a PR that was specifically about our documentation not linking back to various places within itself.
Okay.
So the primary example here is, let's see, if we, it's not in GitHub, what am I doing? If I go to our docs, and we go through, for example, the concepts. So our documentation right now is broken out into some interesting ways. And I think part of the problem is that the documentation is broken out in ways that is not 100% consistent. What I mean by that is like we have this using habitat header, and we have various subheaders, right, which have very different items.
Right.
But our getting started section is kind of the lightweight details. We only have a single one of these that has a drop down. So I don't know, this may be an organizational thing.
Yeah.
But basically, if you go to, for example, Studio, this only contains the data, the conceptual data about what the studio is.
I see.
And there's no linking to any further documentation on that subset of the code base, right?
I see. Yeah.
So it might be good to have links in here that will then go and maybe link to some of that runtime documentation.
Yeah, yeah.
So we could have like in the studio, we may have like link over to creating plans or building packages or something. This might be, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Some more cross-linking and section stuff would be good. My hope is we might be sitting down and looking at now that we're sort of like a year out. Most of the state of like the documentation has been relatively static. We've been sort of like adding within the structure, but we've also learned a lot over the last year. So my hope is that we may just have a sit down and look at the state of things. I do get the feedback talking to other people that some people really enjoy our documentation, which is great. I'm always like looking at it of like, oh, we forgot to add this thing here and this thing there. So I kind of look at it as like, I guess my context is totally different. It is super helpful for most people, but we can always like do a better job or rethink things. So my hope is we'll get a chance to do that in the next month or two.
Yep, and we I mean, we have like David Reed has been working on the docs, so this is likely to get better. I've put it under help wanted for now, but I will actually follow up with David and see if this is something that he wants to undertake, and if it is, then we'll move this over into accepted minor.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I've tried to do that in blog posts and stuff too, is to like, when I say a word that somebody might not understand, if there's a page that I can link somebody to, that's really useful. So.
Yep. Yeah, and especially if you can link down to like the actual header, because the other thing about our docs, and I think that's more what this
yes, I believe we don't have a heading anchor thing in there, which I'm pretty sure Middleman can do for us.
Yep. Yeah. So that's something. I put it in help wanted, and I'll revisit with David, and then and if it's not something he has the time to look at, I'll also look at getting those heading anchors just so that we can copy. You could right click on that, get the link, so that people have that.
Yeah, I have a high degree of confidence that we can probably do that within Middleman. I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
That kind of annoys me too.
Yeah. Sweet. So that being said, I think that's going to be it for this week. Thank you everybody who could join. We'll plan to go through some more of these next week. We've luckily we've kind of gotten a little bit behind with the number of untriaged issues because of all of the crazy amount of work we were doing leading up to ChefConf. But we got a good number done this week. Looks like about 10 issues that we've gone through. So you can look in Discourse soon for the link of the issues that we've talked about and sifted and sorted here today. And that will get posted theoretically into general or the announcements channel in Slack as well. So we will see you, I believe, next week, which is the 19th. It is a Monday. Some of us will see you, or Tuesday. Actually, let me think about that. I don't know if we'll meet next week or not, since a lot of us will be on site at VelocityConf. Yeah, so I'll see if we have teammates who can be here next week. We may skip next week. But if we do, we'll make sure to let everybody know in Slack. So thanks, everyone.